Hello, everyone. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining our live stream from. I am Jonas, Commercial Director here at GlycoSpot, and with me today I have our senior scientist Raymond, and we have our scientist Leonard joining us from the lab to carry out a live demo of our beta amylase diastatic power test. So I think with that, I will request you kindly, Raymond, to start sharing the presentation. Next slide. Det der skifter?
Yeah. You should be able to.
Raymond, if you could go to the next slide.
Yes.
So I promise just to say a few words before I hand it over to Raymond to go through the scientific part of the presentation. So I think what I will say is that we are GlycoSpot. We are based in Denmark. We are in the tech startup business and located just outside of Copenhagen. Our focus and what we do is that we develop enzyme tests that are in application specific. That means they are built for purpose, and you'll see that in Raymond's presentation also when he takes you through our technology. We basically have a plug and play kit in this case for malt houses. Besides from malt houses, we also work with breweries and distilleries, dairies and other food industries where enzymes are important and active players. So that's who we are. Maybe you can take the next slide. And I think just a few words on why we think we have a right to play here. So at GlycoSpot, we are very much driven by let's say the concept of changing the way you can work with enzymes. We all have scientific backgrounds from many different labs, and we know how difficult it can be to set up enzymatic quantifications. And that is actually what we are setting out to change now. So that is what we call transform the way you work with enzymes. I think that's more or less the introduction from me, Raymond. I think the next slide I can take that too. I think I already broke that. So introducing the team today is me, Jonas, and with me I have Raymond and Leonard sitting in the lab. So Raymond will go through the scientific presentation, and we have Leonard sitting ready, trying to run a live demo of the diastatic power test, which I think is going to be very interesting to see how it runs live. I think we're all pretty confident that it should work well then. So thanks a lot, and with that, I'll hand over the word to you, Raymond. During the presentation, you're more than welcome to ask questions, but we'll take the questions towards the end of the presentation. That's it. Thank you. Welcome again.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonas, and I'll take it from here. And it is important to remember when we talk about malt that one key quality parameter is actually the amylase activity. And why is that? Why is that amylase activity is important for malt houses? Well, it is actually the key or the element that converts starch into fermentable sugars. Okay, so without these enzymes, alpha amylase, beta amylase mostly, we would not be able to convert the starch that is present in the malt into the sugars that afterwards will be fermented and converted into alcohol during beer production or spirit production. Therefore, if we have a low amylase activity in malt, that can result in a poorly fermentable wort. That is a wort that cannot be easily converted into alcohol. At the same time, when we think about distilling malt, so that's the malt used for making whiskey, gin, there's a requirement, and that's a very important requirement, to have a certain diastatic power. There is ability to degrade malt. And for that, there is special requirements for our customers to have a certain level of enzyme activity. The most important amylases are alpha, beta amylase, and limit dextrinase. I'll get back to that. And we in this presentation, we will focus mostly on alpha and beta amylase. Now, when we talk about GlycoSpot assay technology, what we need to think it is of a combination of three components. That is our kits here, where the substrate tubes are the main one. The second component, very important series, our handheld spectrophotometer, and also the app that reads out what is produced in the spectrophotometer, and I'll get back to this in a second. But basically, these three elements, the app, the spectrophotometer, and the kit combined are in different fields of expertise, are the ones that add value and give actually the enzymatic activity of your malt. More specifically about series, no matter if you measure alpha or beta amylase, or if you measure the activity on your cleaning in place or the protease activity in your process, the series spectrophotometer will be the same. It's easily connected with your smartphone via Bluetooth, and it's also portable and it's durable, so you can actually, you don't need a lab to run it. You can just use it very simply in your production site. When we think about the journey from all the way from barley grain to beer, there's multiple steps, but maybe the main ones are actually the ones that concern enzymes. That is the germination step, in which enzymes become active. In this step, I'll go back to this, but is where alpha amylase is properly generated. That is one of the main steps in malting, which is followed by a kilning step, that is heating up the malt to stop this germination. Depending on how you combine these two parameters, you actually get a different level of enzymatic activity and defines whether it's a high diastatic power, a regular malt, or a darker malt. But what is important to keep in mind here is that there is activity developing during germination, and there is activity that could be lost during kilning. So it is actually good to measure enzyme activity in both the germination and the kilning. And at the same time, once you have the finished malt and you mill it, make a kind of coarsey flour, and you put it in the mash, which is the first step in the brewery. So these are the main steps in a brewery. What you are actually doing is you are making a kind of soup, we can call it a soup, from composed mostly by water and malt, in which you are extracting the starch into the solution and then hydrolyzing the starch into fermentable sugar by the action of these enzymes you produce during the malting. Now, what are these enzymes? Well, they are mostly alpha amylase, which cleaves. This is an amylopectin molecule, but alpha amylase cleaves from the middle of the chain. Beta amylase produces maltose, which is the most important fermentable sugar and the most common one. It produces from the non-reducing end of the chain and always cleaves maltose. And then you have pyruvinases, in which you are able to cleave limit dextrins. And actually, pyruvinase is a important enzyme when you produce, for instance, low carbohydrate beer. So nowadays, maltsters and brewers and distillers who are very interested in knowing the activity of these enzymes have different options, different possibilities to measure the enzymatic activity of these enzymes, mostly alpha amylase and beta amylase. They can use in-house tests using EBC or ASBC methods. They can buy do-it-yourself enzymatic kits from big suppliers of chemicals, or they can also send the samples to a research center, which will do the test for them. At GlycoSpot, we actually developed a method which is easy, quick, and ready to use in the production site. So our purpose is to actually be able to, you can say, allow the brewers and the distillers and the maltsters to gain control of the quality of their malt and malt. Now, the alpha amylase test kit is ranges, or the measurement range is from 10 to 100 dextran units. We sell them in a 6-pack. That is a box with 6 kits that you can use to measure, for instance, 6 different samples. And these samples can be regular barley malt. It can also be, we tried it and developed it for green malt, but also it can be high diastatic power malt, malt extract, or regular wheat malt. At the same time, our method is calibrated against EBC standards, and you will see in a few slides that we are actually able to hit the values of the EBC reference in ring trials that we participated. Beta amylase is the same concept. We sell them in packs of 6, and the range is 30 to 900 Vintage Kovacs. So it was from 10 to 100 for alpha, 10 to 100 dextran units for alpha, and from 30 to 900 Vintage Kovac for beta amylase. That's a very wide range. We can supply this in diastatic power units and the units that you want, but we can also supply it in beta amylase units like beta-amyl 3 unit. And as it was happening with the alpha amylase kit, these test kits are also suitable for regular barley malt, green malt, high diastatic power malt for distillers, for instance, malt extract, as well as regular wheat malt. And my last slide before I give the word to Leonard. This is an example of how easy is our method. This could be applicable to both alpha and beta amylase. Basically, we have a first step in which we weigh 200 milligrams of the sample that needs to be milled, and then we make an extraction for 10 minutes with buffer. Afterwards, we make a liquid to solid, or the separation of the liquid and the solid with a syringe filtration. Then there is an incubation step at 35 degrees for 7 minutes, and for that we will use a heating box, and you will see that in a second. And the very last step is to actually measure the resulting of this incubation in our series spectrophotometer and with our app, the 3 components I was talking before. And with that said, it's all what is left to do is to give the word to Leonard, who will go through the protocol.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Raymond. So, as you were told, I will try to go through a demo of our Diastatic Power Kit by beta amylase kit. And what I have in front of me here is actually everything that is needed to run this assay. So we have the heated incubator, as Raymond told us, which help us keeping a constant temperature and help us also keep mixing the sample with rotation. And there we have 2 inserts, one for a Falcon tube and then one for Eppendorf tube for the substrate tubes. Then, of course, we need a pipette to be able to measure the right volumes that we need to use, have the right concentrations. Pipette tips. I have a timer, just so I'm sure that I keep track of my time, because, of course, time is an important factor here, since enzymes are time dependent. And then I have the series spectrophotometer, which I'm going to use my mobile phone with to get the end result. And lastly, I have our kit here, which is composed. So this is our 6-pack kit, which has everything you need for 6 analyses. I have 6 buffer tubes. I have a small zip bag with all the plastics. I can quickly go through it. I have cuvettes to be used in series. Then I have the syringe for the separation of the malt and the liquid. And I have my syringe filter. I have 2 transfer pipettes for easily transfer. And lastly, I have a 5 milliliter Eppendorf tube that I will filtrate into, and a 2 milliliter Eppendorf tube to make our reference. And over here you can also see 3 different Eppendorf tubes. I have one marked with green, which is our extraction powder, which we use for better extraction of the enzymes into the buffer. Then I have the red one, which is our stopping reagent to stop the reaction at the end. And then I have our substrate tubes. And these are in 2 layers. So we also have for the 6 analyses. And lastly, down here, I have a small cardboard rack that can help with the 5 milliliter tube. So what we need to get started is, as Raymond explained, I have here a milled malt, which is actually a ring trial sample with, if I remember correct, with a diastatic power of 250 vintage Kolbach. So what we need to do after we milled our malt is that we take our buffer, we take one of the green tubes for the extraction powder, and we empty the entire content into the tube. So everything here is pre-measured from GlycoSpot. So what you see here is how you will receive it. Everything is pre-measured, so you don't have to weigh anything off other than your malt and, of course, when you pipe it. So I shake it to make sure that everything is dissolved, which is rather quick. Seems like that's good. Yes, and after everything is dissolved of the extraction powder, all we need to do now to start the extraction is that we empty our milled malt into the buffer with the extraction powder, close the tube, shake it briefly just to make sure that there is no dry material left. We put it into the incubator and we start the rotation together with a timer at 10 minutes. So instead of waiting here 10 minutes, I think I will give the word back to Raymond to continue.
Thank you very much, Leonard. That was a hell of an introduction to our test kit. We will get back to that in a bit less than 10 minutes so that he can go through the steps. So basically we started here and he will continue with the next steps in about 9 minutes now. Okay, so meanwhile, I'll show you some of our results when it comes to the ring trials. What we did was to compare the result of us measuring some ring trial samples with the ones from the samples measured using EBC methods. What you see here is a collection of 35 results, historical results, whereas here is the last 6 ring trials results. As you can see, we are very close to them. So our results are in gray, whereas the ones from, you can say, the reference values of the ring trials are in dark or in black color, what you can see here is that in most cases we are in an accuracy of plus minus 20 Windisch-Kovac, and if you have a closer look at the latest results, it's most of the times is 10 or below Windisch-Kovac. That is when it comes to accuracy, but if we have a look at what happens if we look into reproducibility and repeatability. So reproducibility, which is the R95, the R capital letter, follows this equation according to EBC Analytica, and that in this range of samples that goes from 200 all the way to 450 more or less, that represents between 50 and 80 Windisch-Kovac, and we are well within that because we are actually in plus minus 20. When it comes to repeatability, that is using the same method in the same lab. For instance, the same user, how the same user can repeat the same result using the same method. The equation to follow would be this one, and for this range would go from around 14 to 20 Windisch-Kovac. And in our case, we are always, as you can see here, the deviations, we are always well within this R95. It is important to say that this ring trials is a mix of different maps, IFPM, BLB, and other ring trials we have been participating. Ring trial after ring trial, we can see that we are always hitting the values. So it's a continuous proof of the quality of our method. Now, another topic I wanted to comment is about the value that it could have to measure the enzyme activity in every production batch. At the moment, most producers wouldn't do that. However, that could ensure that every single batch that you deliver to your customers as a maltster could have the same quality. At the same time, sometimes different batches are mixed depending on the customer requests, or they are stored in big silos where they get all mixed, or in which you can say the quality of the malt could change over time. And we have been observing that. So once we tested a couple of samples from the same, you can say, delivery to a customer, and by measuring the activity with our method, we could detect that there was a decrease from what was stated in the certificate of analysis. In one case, it was 9% below. In another case, it was 24%. This was afterwards also confirmed by analysis in an external lab. So we can actually, by the use of GlycoSpot, you would be able to, you can say, have an absolute control of different inhomogeneities across the same harvest, the same season, variability inside the same silo or delivery, etc. We also have an interesting study case with Avant-Garde Malts. For those who don't know them, they are the biggest malt house in Germany. We had a collaboration in 2020, and at the end of that collaboration, they became one of our customers. And quoting directly the quality director from Avant-Garde Malts, that is Winfried Manke, he said that the values obtained by using GlycoSpot method were in the range of plus minus Windisch-Kovac, which is better than the repeatability R95 that I mentioned before, given by Analytica EBC. They said also, we have decided to use this method in our routine laboratory. As the method is easy to handle, rapid, and precise, we will replace the existing method, and we will also enhance the frequency of analytical checks. So that is how our method gave value to one of our customers. It allows them to use an accurate method, which at the same time allows them to increase the analytical checks that they do in their lab internally. I would also like to touch a bit upon the monitoring of enzymes during the germination, more specifically amylases. As you can see here, this is germinating barley, and you can see that for the growth of roots. But basically, when we talk about barley germination, we could represent it with a picture like this, in which there is an endosperm where the starch is, before germination, separated in different cells, in more than 1,000 cells. And at the same time, you have an embryo and an aleuron part where the enzymes will be produced. Okay, so during germination, what happens is that the embryo sends gibberellic acid to the aleuron, and that aleuron would produce different amount of enzymes, mostly alpha amylase, beta glucanase, silanase, and other proteases. Beta glucanase and silanase in conjunction would break the cell wall material in the starchy cells, releasing them and making the endosperm available for amylases. And at the same time, the amylases, the alpha amylases, will become active. And that is actually one of the biggest changes during germination. At the same time, the different proteases would release beta amylase, which is present before germination, but is not available or is not as active because it's bound to the holding, to the other proteins. But the action of these proteases would also activate beta amylase. So what you have during the germination is the activation of different enzymes for our matter, alpha and beta amylase, which will later on produce the sugars from the starch. So what we did is we run a germination at room temperature and we measure the alpha amylase activity. What we could see is what other researchers have seen with more complicated methods, in which there is a rapid increase of alpha amylase after around a day of germination, and that activity becomes more or less stable over the hours. With our kit, which is easy to use and easy to implement, you will be able to monitor alpha and beta amylase and also optimize the process by means of this information. Now it's almost 10 minutes, so I think I should give the word back to Leonard. I think he should be almost ready to continue with the demo.
Yes, we have 40 seconds, but I can quickly go through what we will do next. So in 30 seconds, as Raymond earlier explained, we will have the separation of the solid and the liquid, and that is done easily with a syringe and a syringe filter that of course is also provided in the kit, and we will filter it into the empty 5 milliliter tube. So there's just 5 seconds until we are ready. There we go. So what we do is that we actually can take out the entire insert of this and put in the Eppendorf tube holder so that the temperature can stabilize again. So now we have our extract. We open the tube, take approximately 5 milliliter, put the filter on the syringe, and just press it through into the Eppendorf tube. And now comes what I would call the crucial step, because here, as soon as we pipette the filtrate or the extraction into the substrate tube, of course the reaction will begin and the enzymes will start to react with our substrate. So as fast as possible, what we need to do is pipette from the 5 milliliter tube into our substrate tube, and put it into the incubator, and then start a timer of exactly 7 minutes, which I have prepared here. So I take a pipette tip, and I take up exactly 250 microliters and pipette it into the substrate tube. Close it, shake it briefly, put it into the incubator, and start the timer. So what we actually also can do now, because earlier I talked about us having this 2 milliliter Eppendorf tube, which we're going to use for to make a reference, which sort of will simulate the conditions in the substrate tube, so that we ensure that we only are reading the enzyme activity. So what we do here is that take a new pipette tip, and then I add 250 microliters of the filtrate. And in the end, to stop the reaction, we will add 250 microliters of our stopping reagent. So I will also add 250 microliters of the stopping reagent to the reference tube. And then I shake it real quick to make sure that it's well mixed. And then, as said, we provide these cuvettes. And we have two, one for the sample and one for the reference. So what we can do now is that we transfer the reference, the transfer pipette, into one of the cuvettes. And then all we need to do is wait for the incubation to be done, and then we are actually ready to measure. So we have 5 minutes now, so I guess, Raymond, you can carry on.
Thank you, Leonard, for making it so clear and so easy. I'll be speaking for another 4 minutes each to speak more about our method, and then I'll get back to you. And then, just a reminder, before I was saying that we are actually able to monitor both alpha and beta amylase at different times during germination, and you could use this to optimize the malting process. But why is green malt something I even mentioned? Well, that is because it's a growing market. It's a potential new market for all malt suppliers. That is because there is a clear trend, clear push from first consumers to be more sustainable, but also when it comes to have a more efficient process and have a better economics in the process. So recently there has been several publications regarding green malt. This is one example of them, in which 100% of the cereal was actually green malt. But there is also commercial patents from the big brewing groups that we all know. So we know that the brewing market is dominated by 3-4 big groups in the world, and some of them have patents that actually show or cover the use of green malt in brewing. And as I was saying, the advantage of using green malt are several. One is the lower use of water and energy, because already the green malt has a humidity content, but also the kilning step is a quite energy intensive step. If you don't need to do it, then you would definitely save energy there. At the same time, the enzyme activity found in green malt is higher, again, because you don't use the kilning, which reduces the enzymatic activity. And therefore, you could also consider the use of more adjuncts or unmalted cereals, like unmalted barley, and therefore also lower the carbon footprint of your process. Now let's have a look a bit about the enzyme activity in malt extract. Malt extract is a product widely used in the industry. I'll get back to this in a second. That has a texture like honey, you could say. It is used in many different sectors, also the brewing sector, but cereals, cookies, bakeries, even chocolate milk shakes contain a considerable amount of malt extract. At the same time, because it comes from malt, it could be expected that some enzyme activity could be present. Producers normally would deactivate them, but they still need an evidence that the enzyme inactivation is happening. And for that, at GlycoSpot, we developed an easy method to actually verify that there's no enzymatic activity left. Just to show an example before let's go back to Leonard. But this is the comparison of what is the activity of a 1% of the initial activity. So the initial activity will be 100 times higher. And this is what the malt extract was presenting. We're able to measure around 20 times lower than the 1% activity threshold that our customers has set to us. With that said, I'll get back to this a bit later, but I think now it's time to go back to Leonard with the completion of the demo in the lab.
Yes, we still have 40 seconds left, but we can go from here. So, as I explained earlier, the only thing that we need to do to finish the assay is, of course, wait for the time. And then we add 250 microliters of our stopping reagent to the tube, which will stop the reaction. And then we are ready to measure on our series. So now there is 3 seconds left. And of course, this step is also important to be as quick as possible because the reaction is still going on. There we go. And I shake it real quick. And here we have our end product that we are ready to measure in series. So I'm going to use the final transfer pipette to transfer into the empty cuvette. And now I don't know if it's really visible, but if you can see it, it has a bright yellow color. So in order to measure in series, what we need is, of course, to turn on the series, and we need our smartphone. So we have our app here, which is able to connect to series. And yeah, it's a little bit hard to see, but I will talk you through it then. So at the first page, you will get a scan device button. So you can scan for devices, and it will come up with all the nearby devices if you have multiple turned on. On the bottom of the series, there's a serial number, and I can see that I have series number 27. So I click on this series number 27. Then it asks you if you want to set it as a preferred device, which means that every time that you turn on series and open our app, if you put on preferred device, it will connect to the device itself, so you don't have to scan for it every time. But I will click no for now, since I am using a lot of different devices. And next page is a page where the app actually asks you for a QR code, and we provide a QR code on the side of all boxes, and this QR code is sort of the secret behind the final result. It has our calibration data and also information on the batch and of the batch of substrate and all this. So what you do is you click scan QR code. It will open up your camera. You will show the camera to the QR code, and it will recognize the QR code. Afterwards, the app tells you to put in a reference cuvette, which we made with the 250 microliters of filtrate and 250 microliters of stopping reagent. And there is a small arrow on the cuvette, which I will align with the arrow on the series. And I make sure that I push it all the way down, so it has the correct glide path. And then I can click on button says measure. And then after this small animation, it asks you to input a sample ID so that you later on can connect the result with a given sample ID that you prefer. So I will click continue. And then it asks you to put in your sample, which is, of course, from the amber tube with the substrate. It has the bright yellow color. So I will again align the arrows, put that in, and now comes the moment of truth. I click measure, the animation goes on, and it gives me 257 vintage Kolbach. And we also have the option to convert into other units, such as degree Lindner and IOB, which is an option in the app. So yeah, I guess that is everything from start to end of the assay. Luckily, we got close to the reference value, which, if I remember correct, is 250 vintage Kolbach. So yeah, that was everything for me. Thank you for watching me.
Excellent presentation, Leonard. Impressive that you were only 7 vintage Kolbach away. It shows how our method is reliable against reference samples. Now, just a quick reminder, this is the result of comparing our assay in a malt extract versus what the customer set as threshold, which is 1% of the initial activity. And as I was mentioning, we are sensitive enough to detect something that is 1/20 of the threshold of the customer. So summing up for today, with our method, what we want is to provide the malting sector, but also the brewing and the distillers, with a tool to measure enzyme activity in order to make a quality control of all the different batches or deliveries or silos, with a method that is fast, simple, reliable, and ready to use. We also want to help maltsters to monitor enzymatic activity during germination. And also we want to help you guys to verify if your malt extract has the activity or has the low activity that you want to have. At GlycoSpot, we are so convinced that our technology works that we offer you the opportunity to try it 30 days for free. You would get a series and a heating device for free for 30 days. You would only need to pay the test kits. If you have any doubt or you would like to get this 30-day free demo, please contact us. That's my email, Jonas and Leonard's email. You can contact any of us. But we will be very pleased to answer your questions and offer you the 30-day free trial. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the presentation as much as we did. I think it's now to give the word back to Jonas, our commercial director.
Thanks a lot, Raymond. I certainly enjoyed both your presentation and I must say that I was a bit nervous to see Leonard press the button and get and when he came to the moment of truth, and I was quite relieved to see that we were indeed spot on with today's measurement. So thanks a lot to you two gentlemen. I have a number of questions, and I still think we have 5-10 minutes to go, so we can take a handful of them. Sure. If you are up for the test here, Raymond.
Yeah, let's do that.
First question is on the milling of the grain, because I don't think much was said about that. So the question here is actually, is the milling of the grain a part of the test kit you provide, and how fine should the milling be?
Yeah, we do not really supply a mill, but you can say conventional mill. By conventional, I mean any lab mill for grain and malt would work. The only requirement is that it's fine flour, so that said in plain words, that you can feel in your fingers that there's no coarse particle. Of course, there would be some husk, but basically, as long as it's fine flour, it doesn't matter too much the size of the particle.
Very good, Raymond. There's another interesting question here, which is it possible to customize the enzyme analysis and expand the range to measure other enzymes? I think I can take that to begin with, and then maybe you can fill in, Raymond. I would say yes, certainly. We have let's say we have assays that are ready prepared for both diastatic power, beta amylase, and alpha amylase. I think I also mentioned in the beginning we're looking into limit dextranase. We also have assays for proteases and other enzymes, and we have a huge library of substrates. So yes, it's certainly possible to extend this type of assay or this type of technology to other enzymes. I think we will reach out tomorrow and we can try to discuss with the person where the question came from, what the specific interest in. But I would say yes, certainly, and we're excited to hear what specific enzymes you have in mind. And I think maybe what I can say is that just like Raymond presented it, the core of the technology is really the series spectrophotometer. So that's a constant parameter, and the variable would then be the test kit and the substrate, of course. So let's try to understand better what lies behind this question. So thanks a lot for that. There is another.
I don't have anything else to add. I think you said. Yeah.
Thanks, Raymond. I think you're right in the sense that it hasn't been published as an EBC method yet. We are in dialogue with EBC. We're also very confident that it will pass a ring trial together with EBC and eventually will be published as an EBC standard. But that's a process, and it's a process that also takes some time. I think what we do meanwhile to guarantee accuracy is exactly what you also explained, Raymond, that we take part in basically any ring trial with any relevant organization around Europe, and we now measure frequently or with a monthly frequency on the reference samples, and we base our assay. We calibrate it up against the EBC standard. So in that sense, it's a one-to-one. The technology is also based on the standard or let's say the protocols described by EBC. So in that sense, it's a smarter version, but the concrete answer is no. It's not approved by or published as an EBC method yet. You could have showed even more data from the ring trials. I think also going forward, we're going to be a little more outgoing with these data, and we're going to publish them also on the website. I think we have absolutely nothing to sort of be afraid of here. When you look at the statistics behind how we rank here, it's only building our confidence that it's a it's a very accurate measurement, both on diastatic power and alpha. There's another technical question here for you, Raymond. Is the digestion buffer guaranteed to break 100% of the material within the time given?
Let's say that what we do is an extraction that for which we developed for more than a year, in which we optimize the extraction time. By optimizing, what I mean is that we get all the enzymes out. So 10 minutes extraction for malt is enough for alpha and beta amylase, but that's for finished malt. When it comes to green malt or other products, then we of course need to consider a higher extraction time. But generally, these times that we mentioned, 10 minutes with the buffer, and also considering that we put 200 milligrams in 50 milliliters or 25 milliliters buffer, so it's a high liquid to solid ratio, that is enough to get all the enzymes out of in the liquid.
Okay, thanks, Raymond.
Yeah.
I think actually I'm gonna try with one final question, and I think that we're gonna close it down for today. It's actually a question we are asked to elaborate on a quote which is fast to implement. Do you want to take that, Raymond?
So yeah, I need to find the question, but
basically, can you elaborate on what you mean by fast to implement?
Sorry. So yes, what I meant is that it is a method that is so simple compared to what is existing in the market that basically you don't need to be very skilled in the lab like you would need for other enzymatic kits, or you don't need a big amount of people like you would need for other methods like current EBC methods that are time intensive. It means that within even the first time you try the method, you can be spot on in the reference value of your samples. So if you would compare an EBC result of one sample and then you would run for the first time our kit, you should be able to be very close to the result. That would be a summary of it. I don't know if you would like to add anything on it, Jonas.
I think if I can add anything, it's more of an anecdotal note. We actually have once in a while one of our marketing guys, but also our graphical designer, carrying out the assay, and I think even there you will nod your head, Raymond, when I say that even the non-scientific staff here get very good results with the assay. So
definitely,
that's the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for joining, attending our webinar this afternoon. I think it's been a privilege to host, and again I'm so happy and relieved that the live demo went really well, because I truly believe it did. So thanks a lot to you, Leonard, and thanks for taking us through the science behind it, Raymond.
Yeah, thank you, and I think Leonard did a great job, and a pleasure to be with you all today.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you guys.
See you.